A professor takes an unhealthy interest in his student, starting a chain of events that leads to him willingly destroying his life for her. After ending a class, Agostino is approached by Marcia, one of his students. She asks for help since she missed one of her tests, but the admin office is requiring her to pay to take it. With this, Agostino takes the woman into the teacher's lounge and gives her a copy of the test so she can take it from there. He then sits across the room while she answers the test, though Marcia seems to struggle with it. Agostino then decides to light a cigarette and offers one to his student. She declines just as Professors Claudia and Juarez walk in. They share that the school is looking to hire 20 new professors, which Claudia thinks would lessen the burden on them. Agostino doubts this is true, but Juarez thinks it is. Marcia then finishes her test, and Agostino starts grading it, though he's unimpressed with her result. That evening, Agostino takes his car home but passes by the bus the students take. He sees Marcia smoking just before getting on the bus, and though she sees him too, she doesn't acknowledge him. Agostino soon comes home to find his daughter, Katia, and her husband, Gordo, visiting for dinner. He invites his son-in-law for a drink as they watch sports until Agostino's wife, Januaria, sets their dinner on the table. He tries to light a cigarette before eating, but his wife catching him makes him stop. The next day, Agostino holds a presentation in class, but gets distracted when he spots Marcia pleasing herself behind him. The professor carries on with the lesson, but can't help himself from watching the student behind him. Marcia finally notices this and stops, so Agostino carries on with the lesson. The next day, he finds Januaria taking down the curtains to have them washed. Worried that she'll fall, he promises to do it for her instead. Januaria argues that it'd take longer since she'll drop off the curtains at the laundromat on her way to the bank. Agostino promises to run her errands at the bank on his way to school as well. That night, Marcia and her friend ask their professor for a ride home. Before heading in, however, Marcia tells her friend to be dropped off first. With this, when they pass by a local bar, the other student asks Agostino to drop her off there while Marcia stays with the professor. Now that they're alone, Agostino puts his arm around his student. He asks why she was giving him a show during class, though she counters by asking why he watched. The professor then asks what she wants to do, and Marcia boldly tells him that she wants to do everything with him. With this, Marcia directs him to drive to her house for some privacy. During the drive, Marcia asks what Agostino likes, and he shares that he enjoys watching his reflection and taking his time during intimacy. They soon stop in front of her house and proceed to kiss. However, Marcia decides not to continue with their activities tonight, leaving Agostino disappointed. He spends the rest of his night quietly reading the paper and having dinner, which he starts to find boring, and so, the next evening, he follows the school bus to keep an eye on Marcia. However, after she alights the bus, she disappears into her apartment building. Agostino gains access when another tenant arrives, allowing him to search for Marcia's apartment. Despite his efforts, he doesn't know which apartment is hers, so he surrenders and heads back down. Just as he's leaving, Marcia's mother, Laura, arrives, so the professor asks about her daughter. Tired from work, Laura just leads the man to her apartment, and Marcia is surprised to see him. Despite the guest, Laura yells at Marcia for lying down on her bed. The younger woman dismisses her and just prepares a concoction to use to calm down. Agostino watches as Marcia injects herself. Afterward, the two walk her dog while drinking, then decide to smoke together. As she prepares it, Marcia sits above Agostino, putting her legs around him. The next morning, Januaria notices that the curtains he picked up from the laundromat aren't complete. He insists that he got them all, but when he confirms that one sheet is missing, he gets pissed and tells his wife to pick it up tomorrow. Januaria is suspicious that he's suddenly frustrated at her, but he insists that nothing is wrong. Later, he finds Marcia playing the drums of the school band. She then gives the drumsticks to the drummer, whom she kisses, much to Agostino's surprise. He discreetly approaches her, but Marcia dismisses him as she watches the band playing. Seeing that he can't talk to her there, Agostino just tells her to meet him at the parking lot. However, it takes hours before Marcia goes to the parking lot. Despite her making him wait, Agostino gives Marcia a nightgown as a present. While hiding behind trees, the two then kiss passionately. But when things get too far, Marcia pushes the man off. Still, Agostino pulls her to him and kisses her, so Marcia kicks him. Angered, the professor slaps her, and the woman hits him back. The man then continues and even pushes her to the ground. However, Marcia grabs a branch and threatens him with it. Despite this, Agostino smiles, excited by how fierce the woman is. Oddly, Marcia smiles at him as well. The following day, Januaria invites her friend Julia over as they prepare for a party. She shares her concerns about her husband, and Julia thinks she shouldn't have retired so early so she can busy herself with something other than Agostino. Agostino then joins them, and Julia notices a wound on his face, which the professor dismisses. He then goes to make some coffee but finds that they're out of milk. With this, he heads out to buy some, only to find Marcia waiting for him outside the store. She joins him in his car before asking to borrow money since her uncle got into an accident. Agostino considers this the next day before visiting Marcia's apartment after school. He finds her asleep in bed after using another of her concoctions. Seeing her in a vulnerable state tempts the professor, so he admires her body for a while. However, he can't bring himself to take things further, so he embraces the sleeping woman instead. As he heads out, Agostino sees Marcia's dog coming down from the upper floor. This gives him an idea. Januaria later wakes up to a dog's whine, so her husband reveals that he just bought a pet for her to fill her time. However, she's concerned about where they'll put the dog, noting that their last one got into an accident. Still, Januaria is happy to have something to take care of, so she kisses her husband to show her appreciation. During breakfast the next day, Agostino receives a call and tells his wife that he has to leave. He goes to pick up Marcia, who greets him with a kiss before asking him to drive her to where her father lives. She expresses her frustration of having to meet the man, but she hurries to her father's apartment anyway. While Marcia heads into the house, Agostino waits for her outside. Not long after, the woman rushes out in rage, cursing at her father. During the drive back, Marcia gets emotional, so Agostino asks what happened. She dodges the question and just mentions that Laura told her he visited the other night. He confirms before comforting the woman as she calms down. They stop at a store for drinks, though Agostino uses the chance to kiss his new lover openly. However, Marcia finally reveals that she has a contagious disease, so they can't be intimate. Despite this, Agostino assures her that he loves her and wants to be with her. On another day, the man joins his family for dinner. However, Agostino notices Gordo seemingly distracted before claiming that he needs to make an urgent phone call. The professor observes his son-in-law during his call with suspicion. Soon, Gordo ends the call and shares that it was his friend who found them a beach house to stay in for a summer vacation. The next day, Agostino teaches a class, but suddenly pauses when he notices that Marcia isn't there. He checks the other classrooms for her but can't find her anywhere. Finally, he sees her walking down the hallway, so he pulls her to talk. She refuses, and when he insists, Marcia grabs his face and asserts that she doesn't want to talk to him now. Despite this, Agostino insists, so the woman reminds him that she's sick, so anyone who touches her will have to pay the price. The professor declares that he's willing to pay, but Marcia reminds him that the price is death. Seeing that all he cares about is getting intimate with her, she mocks him before walking off. Realizing that he's losing his chance with Marcia, Agostino becomes depressed throughout the day. Hoping to reignite the spark elsewhere, he invites his wife on a date. They head to a restaurant where Agostino confesses to his wife that he's been sad lately. He then reminisces about their time together, noting that he still remembers what she wore during their first date. Still concerned, Januaria wonders if he should see a doctor, but Agostino thinks any doctor will just tell him to stop smoking. Just then, he loses his appetite and would rather smoke. Januaria allows him and he continues to reminisce about their past. Later on, he finds his wife bathing the dog despite the late hour. Regretting giving her the dog to help her take her mind off of him, Agostino decides to return Marcia's pet. He takes the dog back to Marcia's apartment, but finds the woman asleep again. This time, Agostino takes his chance to be with the woman. As if to give him no room to turn back, he takes her syringe and gives himself a dose, infecting himself while also giving him a taste of her concoction. The effects, however, make him lose interest in intimacy. Instead, he takes comfort in lying down beside Marcia, who wraps her arms around him. The man goes about the next few days as normal, while Januaria grieves alone at home, having learned that her husband got infected. This breaks her heart, as it also confirms his unfaithfulness to her. Katia and Gordo later visit her, concerned about the older couple. To their surprise, Januaria confirms that Agostino is still sleeping in their room. Katia wonders if her mother would like to move in with them temporarily. They also suggest that she get tested as well to be safe. However, Januaria isn't ready to let go of her husband easily. She soon accompanies him to the clinic, and, since she refuses to leave him, Katia makes amends with her father and assists him with his medicine when she visits. Still, Agostino is forced to move into the smaller bedroom to lessen the risk of infecting his wife, who remains caring towards him. However, she soon discovers that he's not taking his medicine diligently, angering her. One day, while watching his friends play football, Agostino suddenly faints. Januaria later finds him in the hospital, still unconscious. Despite his condition, his friends charge his wife for the taxi ride to get him there. Agostino soon wakes up and Januaria checks up on him. Despite him urging her to let the doctors handle him, Januaria stays with him in the hospital through the night. Katia and Gordo visit the next day, just as the nurses return Agostino to his room after his tests. Katia asks how her father is doing, but the nurse urges them to ask the doctor instead. He also mentions that the patient is only allowed one companion, so the rest have to go. Katia volunteers to stay so her mother can rest, but Januaria insists on being with her husband. Gordo then checks their insurance documents since Agostino should have a private room. With this, he borrows his father-in-law's insurance ID, promising to get them upgraded. While Agostino is having lunch, he finds himself struggling to hold a spoon. Realizing how debilitated he's become finally crashes down on him. He grieves for his condition, regretting what he'd done. The next day, Katia and Gordo arrive with chocolates and a TV to keep them busy. Gordo also confirms to his mother-in-law that they should have a private room, so they can move up tomorrow morning. Katia then urges her mother to go home, insisting that she already prepared her belongings to stay with her father. With this, Januaria kisses her husband's forehead and promises to be back tomorrow. Gordo then guides his mother-in-law out, leaving Katia with her father. At night, Katia is shocked awake when Agostino yelps in pain. She calls for help, and the nurse injects him with painkillers while Katia tries to calm her father down. Concerned, she insists on calling the doctor, but the nurse assures her to just wait for the medicine to take effect. After the nurse leaves, Agostino eventually falls back to sleep. Katia then cries at how much her father is suffering. The following day, Januaria returns to her husband's side. They enjoy watching a film using the TV from Gordo, though Agostino soon tears up as he's reminded of what he can no longer do. That evening, Agostino mutters how much he enjoyed teaching night classes. He then tells his wife that his time is running out, so he instructs her to have him cremated. Januaria confirms, having already faced the reality that he won't live long. Agostino then invites his wife to share his bed, but the woman refuses. Despite her enduring loyalty to him, she still knows what he'd done. With this in mind, Agostino just asks for a favor. The next morning, Januaria hesitantly visits Marcia, only to find that she's moved out of Laura's apartment. She checks Marcia's father's address, and she's also not there. The woman even goes to the spots where substance users hang out, but there are still no signs of her husband's student. Finally, Januaria returns to the hospital, only to discover that Agostino has been transferred to the intensive care unit since his condition had gotten worse. Katia and Gordo are already there, assuming that Januaria went home earlier. The wife puts on a protective suit before checking on her husband, seeing that he's barely holding on to his life. Hoping to fulfill her promise to him before his death, Januaria continues searching for Marcia the next day. She finally finds her living with another man, and despite knowing that Agostino contracted the disease from her, Januaria asks Marcia to visit her husband in the hospital. Marcia asks why her professor is sick, and Januaria doubts that she doesn't know already. With this, Marcia refuses, as she doesn't want to go to a hospital. She then feeds her dog, revealing that it's the same one Agostino brought home to Januaria. Still, the wife asks Marcia to see Agostino before he passes away. When Marcia still says no, Januaria gives her the hospital details in case she changes her mind. On another day, while waiting at the hospital, Gordo receives a message, telling him that his team just sold a large property. Because of this, he needs to leave, and Januaria urges her daughter to go with him. Katia refuses to leave her parents, but Januaria insists, pointing out that they can't even see Agostino right now. With this, Katia kisses her mother, promising to be back tomorrow. Just as they leave, Marcia arrives, though the couple doesn't recognize her. Without words, Januaria helps her prepare to see her husband. Upon seeing him, however, Marcia removes her hairnet and face mask, seeing them as pointless since she has the same illness anyway. Agostino removes his oxygen mask upon seeing her, and despite the ramifications of his pursuit of her, Marcia kisses him and gives him one last moment of pleasure. Afterward, She returns to the hallway where Januaria gives her water. The grieving and betrayed wife even holds her hand, pitying the other woman for the guilt she's carrying.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.